Assalamu alaikum everyone. Thank you very much for joining us on this 52nd episode of Startup Talks. We are joined today by the wonderful Azima Dhanjee. Azima has a really interesting track record. She is the co-founder and CEO of ConnectHear, an Edtech startup and looking to help people with sign language. And because of that, Azima has been the Diana Award winner. She's also been the Youth Ambassador with the US State Department. And we're going to talk to her today then and explore what she has been doing. She's actually a great example of the wonderful work that women are doing in Pakistan, which I think should be highlighted. Assalamu alaikum, Azima. How are you doing?
Walaikum assalam. I'm doing really well. Thank you so much for having me.
That's great. So, Azima, I was reading about you. There's a lot I can say about you, but I'll keep the best bits for you to explain. Let's talk about you first of all. Your upbringing was different from a lot of people. Let's talk about that. How was it different? What encouraged you and to do all those wonderful things and where you are today?
Yeah, I think this is something that everyone's always very curious about. Okay, first of all, why are you working in, this space, which
Mhm,
not a lot of people think about. And then when they find out that I have different upbringing, they're like, "Kaise?" and like, "How did you manage?"
mhm,
So, yeah, I think whenever someone asks me about my identity, I'm very proud to say that I'm a daughter of deaf parents. Both of my mom and my dad, they both are deaf, and
mhm,
I have a lot of deaf family members around me. So growing up with them and having sign language as my mother tongue, my
mhm,
first language, I kind of, realized that it was so easy to communicate and understand my parents and have a normal life inside my house.
mhm.
But then, whenever we used to step outside, the world was different. The world used to look at my parents differently, would look at us differently, or just ask us that how do your parents just raise you, or what do you guys do, or लोग ये भी कहते थे कि आपके पेरेंट्स तो आपको डांटते नहीं होंगे कैसे डांट सकते हैं and I'm like no, it's a pretty normal family and my mama daddy are very strict
Mhm,
about my studies. They want me to do better in life. Whenever I want to go for opportunities, they're the ones who take me, sit over there, wait for me, just like every other normal parent.
mhm,
And I think the difference that only existed was that they spoke a different language. They couldn't hear, so they used sign language as a mode of communication.
mhm.
But we lived in an era where people didn't know about sign language. People didn't know कि जो हाथ हिला के बातें होती है, it's a proper इशारे की ज़बान जो people use.
Yeah.
And just growing up, I always had this, कीड़ा in me, like यार लोगों को बताना है, लोगों को समझाना है, this is normal. I used to enjoy having stares at me, or people used to think I'm also deaf. So at times they would say things like, oh, they all are deaf, bechare, how do they manage? And I'm like just signing and listening to their comments because I can hear.
Yeah.
Chanak say I would start talking just to show them that I'm not deaf, and then they would like feel ashamed about it, and they'll be astonished. But मुझे मजा आता था और मुझे लोगों को बताना था कि it's not something to sympathize, it's something normal.
Mhm.
And the limitation is not just with the deaf community. The
Yeah.
limitation is with you and I as well, who don't know sign language and who can't understand them or connect with them as well.
Yeah.
And growing up, I kind of always used to think that technology is advancing, people are getting into the startup space, people are doing so much
Mhm,
that I always hope that someone's going to work in this area. I never thought it's going to be me. I always thought कि किसी को करना चाहिए.
mhm.
And then I feel that when I was in my first year at university, towards the end of it, I kind of got that कि if no one else is doing it, that doesn't mean I can't do it.
Mhm.
So that moment, changed the life, changed the course for, I think, deaf people in Pakistan.
Chale. This is actually uh, a prime example of resilience, right, and positivity. I think not just you should be taken as an example, but it's a lesson for parents too, right? Everybody is going to be a parent someday, and some people are already parents. It's a lesson for them to have such parents who showed such a dedication. It's of course their effort that you are where you are today, right? And that takes a lot of dedication,
Absolutely.
right? तो उनके लिए भी जो है hats off to them. सबके लिए learning experience है ये. तो uh, in the beginning, let's talk about when you were, say, 8, 9 years old, right? You must have had some difficulties learning, right? Whenever somebody tried to convey a message to you at home, right? So how did you cope with that? How quickly did you learn the language and start a normal communication?
Yes, it's so interesting that sign language is my first language. It's my mother tongue. So I was always really good at sign language as compared to spoken languages.
Mhm.
So my friends always tell me that, whenever I'm talking in like I'm speaking in Urdu or English, I mess up words or there would be times जब मुझे चीजों के words नहीं पता होंगे. I wouldn't know how to say a certain word, but
Mhm.
I would know how to sign it.
Yeah.
So it was very interesting for me, and at times I would say words the way I've heard it from my parents,
Mhm.
and उनकी pronunciation में कहती थी, and I had to learn a lot from school. I had to learn a lot from my friends around me, and they would laugh at it at times, but I had to tell them that this is what I have been raised hearing, and which is why my speech is different, or I had to worked hard to speak better. But then I also think that I have always been really like, confident with speaking because of my parents.
Mhm.
Because since I was very young, since I was like 5, 6 years old, I was like interpreting for them or talking on their behalf with everyone. Either it'd be like making a phone call to my grandma and telling her what my mama is saying. Because
Mhm.
उस वक्त इतना WhatsApp और video call का जमाना नहीं था. Everything happened, everything happened over phone calls. So
Yeah.
and then at times talking to like doctors or talking to rickshawala or talking to everyone, the
Yeah.
communication happened through my brother and I. So that also made us really confident that we can just speak to anyone about anything. But then again, I remember moments like, parent teacher meetings
Yeah.
where I would be the interpreter for my mama. And whenever the teacher would be like, Azima talks a lot. Azima doesn't let anyone study. Azima, हर वक्त मस्ती करती रहती है. And I would like interpret it correctly for my mom. But my mama is the kind of parent who says, it's okay. She's a child. Let her enjoy her life. So mama बस हंस के कह रही है, it's okay. कोई बात नहीं, कोई मसला नहीं है. And
Mhm.
my teacher thought that I am telling her that Azima is a brilliant student. She is so nice with everyone. So my teacher actually asked me to bring someone she could directly talk to. And she's like, I need to talk to someone directly because you're not interpreting it correctly. तो उस वक्त तो मेरे लिए वो था कि यार everyone's bringing their parent to talk to the teacher. Why do I have to like find a distant relative to come and talk? And then secondly, the thing that I realize now, but not back then, it wasn't my responsibility. It was the teacher's responsibility to
Mhm.
communicate directly with my parent. Either they do it through learning sign language or whatsoever.
Yeah.
But I don't think we grew up in that scenario. And there was just so much burden or so much responsibility that people just looked at us with.
Mhm.
And which I think might change in the courses to come. I hope it changes.
चले काफ़ी इंटरेस्टिंग स्टोरीज होंगी एटलीस्ट this from what you're saying, I think you stepped in more or less into life's practicality very early on, uh, at a very young age, right? Because you because of just being an interpreter for your parents, right? So that's actually a really good thing. Um, one last question before we talk about your startup. Uh, how was your experience with the Diana Award and being the youth ambassador?
Yeah, Alhamdulillah, Alhamdulillah. I think, when you said that a lot of what I've achieved, I definitely owe to my parents. So when I was 15 years old or 14, I applied at 14 for a youth exchange program.
Mm-hmm.
And for that, you had to go to United States for 10 months as a cultural ambassador and stay with the host family over there. And I heard about it at school, but once I told it to my parents that there is an opportunity like that, they were so pumped about it, and they made sure that I go through each step. They would take offs from their workplace and they would just come with me for the interview for her cheese. And just being a 15-year-old traveling and living on my own, living with a new family, learning things over there, I think it just gave me a lot of like perspective about what the world has to offer
Mm-hmm.
and how we have the power to define our lives. So, though I've always been called daughter of the deaf, and I'm so proud of it, I can make my parents, even feel better by doing more, serving back the community. So once I came back from US, I got a lot of opportunities through the program to teach English at a lot of places. I was the sign language interpreter for the organization itself because they had deaf students.
Mm-hmm.
And after that, I think once I got into the startup space, I had so much professional experience. I had such great support of the community who I've, grown up with basically. I've spent my teenage years with. उसके बाद जब connect here के अंदर we got a lot of opportunities to represent our work, represent my story, represent my parents. But I would also say that it's not like everything that we aimed at, we achieved it. There were ups and downs. There were competitions, grants, opportunities that we didn't receive. But the only way to go about it was that, until and unless you don't try, you wouldn't know what you get.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that has been my biggest experience, biggest learning during the experience कि यार हर चीज try out करनी है, हर चीज को yes बोलना है, and then however it works out, it might be in your favor, it might not be in your favor, but it gives you huge learning in life. So I think this is my getaway with all the opportunities.
चलें अच्छा moving on to connect here um, uh, uh, of course your life and your background is an example for sure but within the edtech space I think connect here is also a prime example of what it is doing. It's absolutely understood what got you into getting to start this. But for the benefit of the audience, what is Connect here all about?
Yeah, I think so. We define Connecture as disability service providers. Like our focus is that all spaces, all services should be made accessible for persons with disabilities, for the deaf community.
Mhm,
The idea is कि अगर if there is information or communication,
mhm,
how can we make it accessible by ensuring sign language provision at all spaces? So
mhm,
for that, Connecture at this point run multiple verticals. Number one, we teach sign language. So we have sign language courses that are designed for people like you and I
mhm,
who want to connect with deaf community, who have deaf employees, who wants to work for deaf customers. So
mhm,
we teach all of these people sign language. We have had about 1,500 plus students from 17 different countries already learning Pakistani Sign Language with us.
mhm,
Secondly, Connecture also provides sign language interpretation services. So that's our main focus. How can we ensure that if a deaf person is present in Gujranwala, ya Swat, ya Kashmir,
mhm,
and they are in need of a sign language interpreter to communicate, how can we ensure that that's available on their phones? कि
mhm,
वो एक बटन दबाएं और एक साइन लैंग्वेज इंटरप्रेटर उनके सामने आ जाए और वो जो जो साइन लैंग्वेज में बताएं वो बंदा इंटरप्रेटर वर्बली कम्युनिकेट कर सके इंटरप्रेट कर सके. So it's like having a physical interpreter but on your phone. So
mhm,
for that, Connecture launched a mobile application. It's a one tap, one and only virtual interpretation solution जिसके through we have been able to solve a lot of banking issues, hospital related issues, family related, and also for job interviews. Deaf people go for job interviews, but they can't talk to the HR person who's conducting the interview, which
Right.
is why वो लोग जितने भी skilled हो, they can never get a good job. Or if they get a good job, they can never proceed further in the growth map because they are not able to understand what the manager is saying. Communication gap बहुत ज़्यादा है. So through the ConnectHear app today, anyone can just like click a button, have a virtual interpreter, and have an entire communication facilitated. So the best part about ConnectHear technology is that we are not only able to give it to the deaf community, but it's also getting executed in multiple banks. We're also talking to different corporations who are hiring deaf people or who have deaf customers. So
Mhm.
that if these locations, जो आपके कॉमन एरियाज है, बैंक्स की जरूरत हर किसी को होती है, हॉस्पिटल की, कोर्ट की, पुलिस स्टेशन की, अगर इन जगहों पर अगर इंटरप्रेटर ऑनलाइन मौजूद होगा, so a deaf person can go to any space without the worrying कि हम communicate नहीं कर सकते. So
Mhm.
this is something that we're very passionately pursuing and it's working out really well. We're talking to the government of Sindh about it and we're going to launch. We actually had a soft launch on December 3rd, World Disability Day, with CM Sindh,
Mhm.
who himself downloaded the app and guided कि it should be available at all government offices. So we're also focusing on that कि किस तरह से हम हर space को accessible बना सके. Last but not the least, Connector also makes a lot of video content accessible in sign language with the hopes कि one day हमारे television पे 24 घंटे interpreter मौजूद हो ताकि deaf people can also know that what is Omicron and why is it happening again, and how to protect themselves. If we
Mhm.
have the privilege of that knowledge, why shouldn't they? So
Right.
these are some of the things that we are very passionately pursuing and working on with my team, of course.
Mhm. This is absolutely wonderful. I mean, a good example of creating an inclusive environment for everybody, right? It is actually doing away with the notion of marginalized segment of society, right? So that's absolutely wonderful. Now, while you were talking about Connect here, you said something about the use of technology, so I'm just going to get a little bit technical over here, right? Uh, uh, you said you've got people from outside of Pakistan who are using your services too. Now, within Pakistan, for a country like ours, or you can compare India to, we've got lots of languages, right? You start driving from Karachi, move all the way to the north of Pakistan, you see different dialects, different fusions of different languages. So, what's the future plan that Connect here may have with regards to more tech infusion? I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, you might need something like AI built into what Connect here is doing. So, what's the future plan like, and how do you cater to these language barriers right now?
Okay, I think that's a very good question. And सबसे पहली बात about the languages in dialect. So when you talk about Pakistani Sign Language, it's common all over Pakistan.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, you mentioned India. So Indian Sign Language is also very similar to Pakistani Sign Language, which brings a lot of Indian customers towards our application as well.
Mm-hmm.
Talking about the other face of it, the people who are using verbal languages, you're very right. There are different verbal languages that are being used.
Mm-hmm.
Mostly, what our experience has been that most of the calls that we get, people are using Urdu and English. But of course, because we want to expand and venture out as well, we now have interpreters who are specifically designated for Sindhi because we're starting with our own province first. And slowly and gradually, we're going to make connections with at least an interpreter in each province who knows the language and who also knows sign language, so that they can balance between all the languages with PSL.
Mm-hmm.
And the best part is Pakistani Sign Language remains the same. So if I am listening Sindhi and I understand Sindhi,
Mm-hmm.
I'm still signing Pakistani Sign Language. If
Mm-hmm.
someone knows Punjabi and they're listening Punjabi, they are also doing Pakistani Sign Language. It's about interpreting one language to the other.
Mm-hmm.
And as far as the tech development is concerned, of course, so from day one, we have been very tech focused. We have been looking into ways of how can we automate the systems as well.
Mm-hmm.
So when we talk about converting audio into sign language, that is possible. We have already done that. That's a stitching the videos together kind of solution. But talking the other way around, us doing the sign language and the mobile phone or the computers interpreting that into audio or text is a technical challenge that hasn't been solved around the world,
Mm-hmm.
considering the immense amount of data it would require for the screen to just read the sign, knowing the skin color, the way of your finger placement, बहुत ज़्यादा data intensive है. उसके बाद ये भी है कि there are a lot of sign words that are similar.
Yeah.
So एक ही sign के तीन मतलब हैं, but you know that through the sentence or the context that it is used in. So again, a lot of technical input that is required. That's something my co-founder Arham's very passionate about because he has the tech background and something that we're also looking forward to and talking to a lot of people internationally about it as well.
Chale, that's
But
great.
I have to mention, and if anyone's listening to this, please, I get a lot of people tagging me on, these projects, these university theses where people are making gloves. And these gloves are supposed to interpret sign language into audio and text. I don't know if you have seen a glove like that because it's all over Facebook. आपने देखा है कभी?
No, I'm not much of a Facebook user. Sorry.
Smart. So I'll brief you about it, and a lot of I get like two to
Yeah, yeah,
three tags
go ahead.
every week regarding it.
Yeah.
So basically, it's a glove. It's a hand glove, and it has a lot of तारे लगी हुई हैं उस पे, and it's connected to a system. And the concept is that when the gloves go like this, the computer shows that this is the sign for A, and this is the sign for B, and this is the sign for C. So a lot of people are like, this is automating it, and it's like, आपकी sign वो देख कर computer is reading the sign. But there are a lot of issues with this glove and with this project and why it hasn't been commercialized yet.
Mhm.
Number one is this that um, sign language के अंदर static signs तो होती है, लेकिन there are movement signs. Like for example, I say thank you, so it's a movement sign.
Yeah.
Movement signs can't be read by the glove. The glove can only read static signs,
Mhm.
and that's the limitation of it. Secondly, when you talk about sign language, it's not only hand signs, but it's also your facial expressions, your body gestures that adds on to the meaning of the entire conversation.
Mhm.
And that's something an akela glove cannot do.
Yeah.
So these are the limitation with this project, which is
Mhm.
why it hasn't been commercialized.
Mhm.
And people need to start thinking the complexity of sign language. But hopefully, when we work with the AI and image recognition wala part, somewhere around the world, or inshallah with us somewhere around the world, people will find a solution to automate it. But
It's
not yet. It hasn't been done yet.
it's good that you've put this into perspective so that people understand. And now, Azima, I know that we're coming to an end of time, but I have to squeeze in two questions here, right?
For sure.
So, uh, the first one, through this platform, right? It's good that you mentioned this thing about the glove, right? It's because of that I have to squeeze in an extra. Through this platform of Startup Talks, what difficulties does Connect here have right now, right? That you would like to cover up on and need support with, so that whoever is watching this, if they want to reach out to you, all right, what help would you need to scale further?
I think I need crazy people like, Arham and myself and my team to come join us
Mm-hmm.
to work on this idea. I would like for people to not look at it as only like a very good social project, it is. But then now we are working with businesses. We are now working with a lot of companies who are focusing on disability,
Mhm.
and we're working with stakeholders as well, the government as well. And we need good people to make all of these ideas come true. So if you're listening to this and if you're passionate about working on something new and different, because it's a different industry altogether, do come join us, reach out to me. Would love to have more passionate, crazy people in my team.
Okay, that's great. Now that's the purpose behind these talks as well. I'm sure you must have been on many
Yeah.
discussions before, right? And the reason behind startup talks is to be away from the usual talks that normally take place with regards to promoting brands and everything. Now, in the end, Azima, of course, you've got a wonderful journey, right? A spectacular life, and you've achieved a lot. Um, and that too being a woman, right? In Pakistan, the startup space and beyond, you don't see a lot of women that are being highlighted. There are many, many, many like you who are doing wonderful things, right? And many stay behind. There's a culture in Pakistan के लड़कियां पढ़ती हैं डॉक्टर तक बन जाती हैं और फिर वो घर बैठ जाती हैं राइट आई एम अ फादर टू अ डॉटर माई सेल्फ सो दिस इज a subject that I hold very close to heart, and I think they should be given an equal opportunity to progress. So, uh, since you've made so much progress, what message would you have for all the wannabe entrepreneurs or for those women who want to take inspiration from you?
Yeah, I think it is so important to know that anyone can make their ideas come true. It's about taking that first step. It is so important to know that you not always need capital or a lot of resources and support to make your idea come through.
Mhm.
You have Facebook, you have Instagram. Just start working on your idea through these platforms. See the kind of engagement you get. Say yes to the opportunities that are given to you, and just let Allah take you through the path and just gift you with things
Mhm.
that you deserve in life. You will have tough times. You'll have to have very strong grit. You'll have setbacks. There'll be days you'll be crying. There'll be days you'll feel like you shouldn't be in this field.
Mhm.
But it's all about staying persistent and responding to the way your customer, your audience is responding to you. That is very, very important. Secondly, my message to the world out there, I would say, with their work with women entrepreneurs. I feel पिछले कुछ सालों से comparatively up, there are a lot of organizations and spaces that are focusing on women entrepreneurs and bringing youth, लड़कियों को लाना चाह रहे हैं वो लोग, equality रख रहे हैं. But I would encourage them to think about the limitations we have generally, right? There are some limitations we can't go beyond. For example, if you're inviting a woman to a talk and you're saying कि हमने तो panelist में लड़कियों को बुलाया था but nobody showed up, that's why we had to have a complete male panel because girls can't take out time. You need to understand that if it's after working hours, it's difficult for a mother or for a wife to actually go out and attend panels because they have other responsibilities at home. So maybe have the panel during the working hours or during a time where they are comfortable with the two. And then at times women aren't allowed to travel after certain hours because it gets unsafe or they don't feel safe to travel on their own. So maybe offer them transportation, offer them a mean to mobilize, or tell them they can do the speaker session online. They could join through Zoom.
Mhm.
So it's not always about कि यार मैंने तो पूछा था उनसे उन्होंने मना कर दिया लड़कियां आती नहीं है सिर्फ लड़कियां आ जाती पैनल में तो हमें उन्हें ही अकोमोडेट करना पड़ता है. It's about that extra step. Did you ask them what would make their representation possible? possible or feasible. And I would want everyone to think like that. It's not that we don't want representation, we don't want to come and share our ideas. It's not that we are not talented, we are very skilled, we're very confident, and we have brilliant world changing ideas. It's that we have probably a lot more responsibilities than the other genders. So maybe we need to see ways of making women representation feasible, accessible as well.
Chennai, that's great. It's a wonderful thing to say that things should move beyond just talk, right? खाली बातों से ही नहीं काम होता मतलब obviously
Yeah,
every society has its own dynamics, right? And the solutions should be brought forth with regards to those dynamics. Chale,
absolutely.
Azima, thank you very much for being here. Your story is truly inspirational. I'm actually going to get my 10-year-old daughter to see this as well, right? And to,
Please do share feedback with me.
yeah, I will. So, thanks for being here, Azima. Thank you for your time. Best of luck with
Thank
your
you so much.
venture. If there is any way I can help out and contribute in my personal capacity, please do give me a shout out.
I
I'll do
will.
whatever is possible. So, best of luck with
Thank
this.
you.
Thank you for being here. Assalamu alaikum.
Allah Hafiz.
Allah Hafiz.